Dallas, that when I was in Egypt in 1980 to 81, the whole country was watching Dallas reruns every night on television, and one of my neighbors who was very Islamist, told me she felt it was her duty to watch Dallas in order to understand the enemy, the America, and a professor at the American University in Cairo was teaching her, had discussed with her students what Dallas tells us about American society. So that this, what it tells people, of course, is that Americans are very materialistic, that we all commit adultery. This is the image that they have. So it's very dismaying, of course, and so the image that they have about us is, of course, very distorted. The image that we have about Muslims is often very distorted as well. So after the 9/11 attacks, President Bush said that the reason they attacked the World Trade Center and the Pentagon is that because they hate our values, they hate our freedoms. And of course, any of us who've been in the Muslim world know that they don't hate our freedoms. They would love to have our freedoms. But what is interesting is that the picture just went dim. Is that okay, or what happens? Okay, I don't know.
Let me just, thank you, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so do I have to tell you every time it goes dim then, okay?
Yeah, I'll just keep moving.
So, but ever since Samuel Huntington wrote his article and then his book on Clash of Civilizations and New World Order, there has been a lot of talk about a clash of values between the Muslim world and the United States. And a poll was taken after the 9/11 attacks of some students at the American University in Beirut, Lebanese students, both Muslim and Christian, male and female, and they were asked a whole lot of different questions. But what was interesting is that most of the people felt that the reason for the attacks was lashing out against the perceived U.S. aggression against the Muslim world, and those who felt that the attacks were justified, almost all felt that way. In other words, it had nothing to do with a clash of values. In fact, the only people who seemed to think there was a clash of values were Christian Arabs, who totally disagreed with, felt that the attacks were totally not justified. What this indicated, though, was that the Muslim respondents did not feel there was a that Muslim and Western civilization have radically different values. Rather, they are angry about aspects of U.S. foreign policy, like U.S. unconditional support for Israel, combined with a perceived lack of concern for Palestinian human rights, and the U.S. sanctions against Iraq, which had deprived, for 12 years, deprived Iraqis of basic food and medical care, etc. So there were grievances that they felt then concerning U.S. foreign policy. So I think it's interesting that they did not see it was not certainly a dislike of our freedoms.
Okay. And I just wanted to ask a few things. I remember from class you clarified the meaning of jihad, because I think that's a very valid point.
Sure. The word jihad means a struggle or striving, and the concept of jihad is very much a part of Quranic language. The Quran speaks of the necessity of striving in the path of God with your body and with your goods. And with your body in the context of the lifetime of the Prophet did indeed mean to participate in warfare on behalf of Islam. with your goods, of course, means donating your wealth to the poor and to the cause of Islam. But jihad, in the sense of struggle, has a much broader meaning in Islamic tradition. And, for example, in the Sufi tradition, and Sufism, of course, being the mystical tradition of Islam, but although it's more than that, Sufism is defined by many Sufis as the purification of the soul. That its basic aim is to purify oneself, root out all the evil and selfish desires in oneself, and to love God totally, and for His sake only, without regard to reward or punishment in the afterlife. So for them, and I should also say that Sufism is pervasive in the Muslim world. I mean, really, until the 20th century, almost any Muslim man would belong to a Sufi order. And but if you look in the manuals that the Sufis write for their disciples, they always have a chapter on jihad, and it never means warfare in that context. It always means the struggle to root out the evil in one's own self. So there is a hadith that Muslims often like to quote, in which it says that the Prophet and his companions were returning from battle, and the Prophet said, "We now leave the lesser jihad and go to the greater jihad." So we're leaving the lesser struggle and going to the greater struggle. And his companions said, "What can be a greater jihad than fighting war in God's name?" And he says, "The greater jihad is fighting the evil in our own selves, And so, therefore, jihad is seen as a sacred obligation. Today, many progressive, there's a Muslim movement of people who call themselves progressive Muslims. And for them, the biggest struggle is to struggle for social justice, the rights of the poor, the rights of women, the rights of non-Muslims in Muslim societies. So for them, this is what jihad ought to be focused on, not warfare. So therefore, though jihad is a sacred obligation, it can mean many different things. And therefore, some people, like the scholar Khalid Abdel Fadl, who is an Egyptian American scholar at UCLA, objects to the use of the term jihadi or jihadist in our media to talk about violent or militant Islamists, because he said they have taken what is a wonderful spiritual term, jihad, and apply it to people who've perverted Islam by committing terrorist acts, which could not be condoned even in the sense of a holy war. Terrorism could not be condoned. So, therefore, it does certainly mean something other than holy war, and it means something very different from terrorism, that's for sure.